No, wait, you're out. Oh, well. You get a freebie.
Yeah.
We have a group of students from Andrews University in the back.
We do?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
I've done before.
Should I have you sing the fight song?
Yeah.
Another hour.
Sure. Just go over here. Yeah, you called me. Okay. You want to be here? No, I'm good. We can't go over there. We can't. We got to talk about ours.
I saw him in the earlier. I haven't seen him. I saw him just before this call out, like he was. Yeah, just to see.
Okay. Okay, great. Okay.
We still got others. We still got another one. Eventually.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so.
Okay.
We're getting ready. Why everywhere in the world? Huh? I said 2 more counselors.
Oh, really? That's one of our rules.
He's bringing it.
Well, is he going to take this way? He got off the hill. Is he good? You sound good? Or no? Oh, girl might sound good.
Yeah. That's cool. Let's go city council. And the people that I work with. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. Y'all ready? Who wants some Joe? Joe? Time management. Nothing different. All right, you ready? Good evening. The Monday, March 11th, 2019 Common Council meeting is now in session. Would you please rise? Our invocation is by Pastor Jason Miller of South Bend City Church. Thank you, sir, for coming.
Thank you. Before I pray, I always like to offer the same disclaimer, which is that I'm a person who finds prayer to be a very meaningful word and finds God to point to something I trust and find true. But this isn't my space, it's our space. And I really want everyone to feel at home here. So if prayer is not a word that works for you, if God's not a word that works for you, maybe we could see this as a shared meditation on our best desires for our city. That being said, let's pray. Loving God, we pray because we feel the weight of what we're a part of, the ongoing task of being together as a city, and the sacred work of making South Bend a place of justice, a place of opportunity, and a place of flourishing for everyone who calls this place their home. We pray for the council and their work. We ask you to call them to their best selves, their most selfless vision, their deepest wisdom in leading our city. We ask you to bless them and everyone who works on our behalf in city government. May they know our gratitude and your favor as they give themselves to this work. As our city looks ahead to a number of transitions in leadership that are coming in the months ahead, I pray that this would be a chance for us as a community to dig more deeply into who we are and what we have to offer each other when we come together. May we know how good it is to be here in the place called South Bend, and may we sense your loving presence in our midst. In your name, amen.
Amen. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. If you would, please turn your cell phones to silent. Yeah, that includes you, Jake. Ms. Fowler, roll call, please.
Councilmember Preston? Here. Councilmember McBride? Present. Councilmember Broden? Here. Councilmember Teschka?
Here.
Councilmember Davis?
Present.
Councilmember Gordy?
Here.
Councilmember Furlick is excused. Vice President White? Present. President Scott?
Present.
8 present.
Thank you. Report on subcommittee minutes.
We don't have a report on the subcommittee for minutes today. We will approve prior week minutes next council meeting.
Which is fine. They're about wrapped up working on the marathon meeting from 2 weeks ago. So, before we move to special business, I'd like to recognize the great students from Andrew University. If you all stand up in the back and wave. Now would you please sing the fight song? You don't know it. Okay. Thank you. We'll move on to special business. Ms. Fowler, 1916, please.
1916, a resolution of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, publicly commending the Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Inc., South Bend Alumni Chapter, for their commitment to community service, scholarship, and social action for the City of South Bend, Indiana.
Thank you. Is there a single presenter or multiple?
Well, we're going to have multiple presenters. So I'll wait until they are here. I'm going to ask members of the sorority to please come and join us at the podium, please.
Vice President White?
Yes. My name is Karen White. I'm an at-large council member. I live at 1912 Melbourne Way here in the city of South Bend. And I'm very pleased to be able to present this resolution in conjunction with my fellow council members. And so at this time, we will read into record this resolution. The resolution is number 4771-19. A resolution of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, publicly commending the Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated South Bend Alumni Chapter for their commitment to the community service, scholarship, and social action for the City of South Bend, Indiana. Whereas Delta Sigma Theta was founded on January 13, 1913 by 22 collegiate women at Howard University. These students wanted to use their collective strength to promote academic excellence and to provide assistance to those in need In March of 1913, the founders of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated performed their first public act. They participated in the Women's Suffrage March in Washington, D.C. Delta Sigma Theta Incorporated was incorporated in 1930, and
Your name and address before you start.
Karima Fowler, South Bend City Clerk, office is on the 4th floor.
Thank you.
Whereas Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated is a private, non-for-profit organization whose purpose is to provide assistance and support through established programs in local communities throughout the world. Since its founding, more than 200,000 women have joined the organization. The organization is a sisterhood of predominantly Black, college-educated women. The sorority currently has 1,000 Colgate and alumni chapters located in the U.S. and abroad. Whereas, since its founding in 1913, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Inc. has clearly distinguished itself as a public service organization that boldly confronts the challenges of African American and hence all Americans. Over the years, a wide range of programs addressing education, health, international development, and strengthening the African American family have resolved. In realizing this mission, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Inc. provides an extensive array of public service initiatives through its 5 points. Programmatic thrust of education development, economic development, international awareness and involvement, physical and mental and political awareness and involvement.
Thank you. Next, name and address.
Sharon McBride, 415 East Broadway, South Bend. And whereas the South Bend Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, Inc. was the first Black Greek letter organization in the Michiana area, chartered on December 3, 1955, at the historic LaSalle Hotel in South Bend, Indiana, by 9 women who were part of a local group called the Soros Club. And whereas the charter members include the first Black woman to graduate from the University of Notre Dame, the first and only Black woman appointed to the Indiana Women's Prison Parole Board, and many other contributions, recognitions, and awards in the area of human growth, development, and welfare, and
Oliver Davis, 1801 Nash Street, South Bend, Indiana. Whereas in 2016, the South Bend Alumni Chapter established a theme brand using the power of our voices that has created a consistent message for our social action efforts. Using the power of our voices has allowed the chapter to bring to the table a number of our citizens and those who in the past had not realized the power of their voices. And whereas the sorority commitment to civic engagement is clear. During the election cycles, the chapter has implemented comprehensive voter registration, education, and mobilization efforts. A number of Meet the Candidate forums were held. Using the Power of Women Vote was held in recognition of National Women's History Month, as well as Super Sundays, Get Out the Vote efforts. And whereas the South Bend Alumni Chapter, along with the St. Joe Health System, Greater St. John Missionary Baptist Church, and other organizations present their annual community health and research affair to provide free screenings and valuable resources for youth and adults. And
Regina Williams Preston, 838 North Elmer Street, South Bend, Indiana. Whereas Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, South Bend Alumni Chapter, the South Bend County Democratic African American Coalition, and the Martin Luther King Center Senior Men's Club embraced the call for action along with other community partners, resulting in a number of community forums and workshops held in the community to bring attention and awareness regarding the effects of these drugs. And now, therefore, be it resolved by the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, as follows. Section 1. The Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, publicly honors and congratulates the South Bend Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated on their outstanding leadership and commitment to social action and community service by following in the footsteps of their founders and remaining in the forefront of action as a voice for those in need.
Thank you.
Okay. Section 2. The Common Council recognizes Delta Days at the state capitol. 2 position papers were presented to our state leaders on hate crimes and redistricting. Sorors had also met with their elected officials. Section 3. This resolution shall be in full force and effect from and after its adoption by the Common Council and approval by the mayor. We'd like to know that the mayor has already approved the resolution, and so we ask for your support in regards to the resolution that we are now giving to this wonderful sorority, the ladies in red. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Good evening. My name is Arnez Lee, and I reside at 1743 North Huey Street here in South Bend, Indiana, and I'm the president of the South Bend Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta. And we would like to thank you for honoring our social activism in the community. We have been serving the South Bend community for 64 years, but we have been serving our country as a national sorority for 106 years. And we really believe in being socially active in our community, and this is what we do. But we would also like to thank our soror, Karen White, because she heads our social action committee. So she keeps us on our toes, and she keeps us aware, and she keeps us socially active in our community. So we would like to thank her as well.
Thank you. Anyone else from your group would like to say something?
Please.
So my name is Kimberly Greenweaves. I reside at 50555 Galaxy in Granger. I am the VP for Delta Sigma Theta sorority. I too just want to second what our president has shared here. Councilwoman Karen White continues to be a leader for us within our sorority and really helps to make sure that we are present in the community, and that is something that without her would not be as easy for us to navigate. And so I do want to express sincere appreciation not only for soror Councilwoman Karen White, but also the fellow members behind me as well. They have been very instrumental in a lot of the things that we do, and I can't thank you all enough for your presence in working with us in the collaborative effort in the community as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That is awesome. At this time, we'll turn it back to council.
Thank you. I get the honors of going first.
Yeah, you do. Since we don't even have a quorum up here.
Yeah. But nonetheless, your history of leadership, your advocacy, your awareness on really important issues, your empowerment, across the community and particularly with women's voices, really is admirable. The longevity on the national level, then just even locally, is really remarkable, outstanding, and the fact that you are here today in such strong numbers, and I know this doesn't represent your entire group because I've had occasion to see your numbers in the past, but I do think that your numbers and the work that you have done really is what is attracting people to your cause, and it then in turn gives you such an authority on these important issues in our community. I do want to particularly thank you for your very robust engagement on the hate crimes issue within our state of Indiana and redistricting. I don't think there are two issues that supersede those in terms of importance in our day and in our time. And on both an individual basis for the people who live in the state of Indiana, but then also collectively the work and the business community as well. So I thank you in particular for the timeliness and the work that you're doing most recently on that. And I know it's been a long and rich history, but I think your activism in particular at this time couldn't be more needed. So thank you for your leadership on that.
Mr. Teska?
Yeah, I would just echo a lot of what Councilmember Groden said. A lot of the resolution itself says a lot. Just thank you for your leadership in our community, for being engaged in not only South Bend, but in Indianapolis and far beyond. And so thank you for all that you do.
Chairman Morty.
Ladies of the sorority, know how you feel. Karen keeps us on our toes. We're privileged to have your work in this community and appreciate it very much. Thank you.
So, ladies, thank you so much for all you do and what you represent on the national level, too. It seems to me every time since I've been on council, something impressive happening, and there's a little hint of red somewhere on someone's outfit, or as Miss White is wearing the full red. Every time I turn around, there's something impressive going on, and there is that little red somewhere. And it's just amazing what you've done, what this organization has done over the years. Truly outstanding, and I appreciate all of you and working with you in the city as well. So, with that, and I know this fine group here, speaking for them, all their heart and soul into this resolution, and all the work that they've done with your group is amazing. So, with that, I want to open it up to the public. Anyone from the public wishing to speak in favor, please come to the podium. I knew that would be the first one up.
Samuel Brown, 222 East Navarre Street, South Indiana. And these ladies are remarkable. Like you, are still everywhere. And I hope that the work continues. As more members come, they do a wonderful job in that community. It's much needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none. Anyone wishing to speak against? You gotta ask. Seeing none. If the council members would get close to that microphone, please.
Okay.
Can I have a motion?
I move this resolution be adopted by acclamation.
Second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Thank you, carried.
Thank you so much for your work. Thank you so much. Thank you. You are. You are. Okay. Nice job,
Good job, John. Got to move over so I can photobomb.
That's right. They're not in the center.
Almost there. There. Thank you all. The Hoosiers get the Buckeyes Thursday.
I'm telling you.
Hands down on the ground. Thank you all.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
With that, we'll move to reports from city offices. We have none. Laura O'Sullivan is in the audience for the mayor's office. Thank you for being here, Laura. Before we go to committee of the whole, I would like to entertain a motion to suspend the rules and hear resolutions before committee of the whole. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Ms. Fowler, we'll go to resolutions. Would you please read 1904, please?
1904, A resolution of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, approving a petition of the Area Board of Zoning Appeals for property located at 1119 Lincoln Way West.
At the time, we did not have a chair or co-chair and no quorum for zoning and annexation. I filled in as chair. There was no recommendation, and there was no petitioner at the meeting. If you want, go ahead and you want to present?
Should we state the...
Please state what you told me earlier.
Okay, Jordan Wyatt, Department of Infrastructure Planning and Growth, 11th floor of this building.
We can't hear you. A little louder. Just pick it up.
I still don't think the petitioner is here. I didn't know if you wanted to check. Petitioner's not here?
Petitioner in the House.
We'll call it 3 times. So the petitioner for 1904 in the House. Is the petitioner for 1904 in the House?
Give the property address.
Is the petitioner for 1904, 1119 Lincoln Way West in the House? Okay, back to council.
I would recommend that we postpone this. We have the opportunity to do that and give the petitioner one last try under the time frame it's allowed. Second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? We'll continue to 3:25, I would... Right.
Yes, I'm sorry, I should have been more specific. Yeah, it has to be done by that date.
Okay. Thank you. We will move on. Ms. Fowler, 1915, please.
1915, a resolution of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, approving a plan for the city administration to create a South Bend Plan Commission and Board of Zoning Appeals, separate and distinct from that of the county, and to draft an ordinance in conformity with that plan.
Thank you. Is there a presenter?
I'd like to make a motion to hear the second substitute to Bill 1950.
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Thank you. So we will hear a second sub. Presenter.
Thank you, council members. My name is Tim Corcoran. I'm the Director of Planning for the City of South Bend. This is coming back to you after a couple weeks where we went back and looked at, try to answer some of the questions that you asked at committee. And I hope I can answer some of those questions for you. So what does this resolution enable us to do? And it's simply to allow us to hire 2 new staff as proposed and outlined in the 2019 budget. And these 2 new staff are critical in helping us work towards the development of a South Bend Plan Commission. The responsibilities of these 2 new staff members will be to coordinate with the existing Area Plan Commission in terms of knowledge and data transfer, looking at the existing processes to understand where we might be able to find some efficiencies and refine those processes, and help us continue with the quick fixes that we've been doing over the last couple of years, and also with the rewriting of the zoning ordinance to date. And it's really important that those people play a role in that, because those will be the people who administer it. So it'll be a great way to make sure that, like, when we get to that point, they're starting with a lot of knowledge behind them.
Tim, I'm sorry to interrupt. For the record, I was acting ZNA chairman for the committee. We did send this with no recommendation because there was no quorum. So I just want to make that for the record. So go ahead, sir.
What the resolution does not do is establish the South Bend Plan Commission. This needs to be done as an ordinance, and this will be brought to council later this year, and I'm estimating approximately in September of this year. And between now and then, we can we hope to, and we plan on, working through all the issues that you raise, that we find internally, to make sure that we meet one critical goal, which is to have a seamless transition if we want this to happen. So why establish a plan commission for South Bend? So philosophically, I think South Bend citizens should be making decisions on South Bend issues. We have the right people and a wealth of internal experience. There are a lot of people in South Bend who, and some of those members are on the existing Plan Commission and the Board of Zoning Appeals, who understand planning, who understand the objectives of the city. The South Bend Plan Commission members will have a greater insight into city planning objectives. And this is because they understand the goals of the city, because they are people who live within the city. And we hope that there'll be, and we expect, better communication throughout the zoning process. So when you get a recommendation, there will be one recommendation, and it flows through. There won't be any sort of mismatches in that. We want to streamline the process. So currently, strategic planning, which is my department, we look at neighborhood vision, and with lots of citizen engagement. The building department does what's called plan review. So this is when a project that is already appropriate in a zone. So currently, we don't really see those projects. At least DCI doesn't really engage too much on that because we don't really see that very often. And then finally, our economic and business development side, which is usually working with a developer. So when a developer comes to the city and is looking to build something, they usually start there. Having all this together really allows us to streamline that process and to really work together to help shepherd these projects through the system. We also hope that we can help with zoning code compliance. And what I mean by that is, firstly, and we've been doing this, is looking at the zoning ordinance to eliminate all unnecessary, overburdensome, and out-of-date regulations. So you've been helping us do this already, all right? So this is a positive step that we want to keep doing. But we want to also stand firm on rules that we believe in and we believe make the city a better place. And if we're consistent in the application of the zoning code, and especially at the BZA level, we believe this consistency promotes compliance with and reduces overall administration time and time here in front of you. So this is one of the things that we really hope will and we look to accomplishing in the future. There were questions about the independence and accountability of these boards. Well, state law dictates what the criteria that these boards must utilize in order to make their decisions. And this will be the same case for whether when it becomes part of the South Bend Planning Commission. These criteria are clearly defined in state law, and these are the criteria that the current Area Board of Zoning Appeals and Planning Commission also use. We also have been taking an incremental approach to this. So not only have our quick fixes have been incremental and over time, but we want to use these two people to incrementally look at all the different things that we need to look at in order to be sure that come the end of the year in January 1, 2020, when we like to pull the trigger on this, that we've addressed all those steps. One of the questions asked a couple weeks ago is in terms of cost. Now, these are the positions. There's a zoning administrator, an admin assistant, a zoning specialist. And all up, and first of all, I should add that one of these positions is already in the budget, and it was a rollover from the building department. The 2019 budget is what the two new positions, so that's the position status column there. But I wanted to, just for transparency and just to get it out there to know that the true cost, the maximum salary that could be paid to these people, plus the fringe benefits, would equal up to $250,000. Now, at the moment, this does not include any potential additional legal costs that might be incurred, but, and this might be for additional staffing or outsourcing. But what we have done in the last couple of weeks is we've been able to get the South Bend's Corporate Counsel, Stephanie Steele, along with Aladeen and Sandra Kennedy, in a room with Mitch Heppenheimer and Brandy, who is the lawyers for the Plan Commission and the BZA, to talk through all their issues, talk through the time that it takes for them to work on these different commissions and boards. And I think what we got out of that is that the ramp-up period between today and when we get it all working, that's where a lot of the effort is going to take place. But once we get to that, past up that ramp, that the day-to-day or month-to-month operation of these two commissions is actually not too onerous. So what we're hoping to do is, if there is some outsourcing that we may need to do, for instance, to write new bylaws for these organizations or for these boards and commissions, that we might look to use funding that we already have in place for professional services, for instance, to sort of fill that gap between now and the end of the year. We've also looked to working with our innovation team regarding any IT-related infrastructure that might be necessary. So we've already had meetings with our innovation team and the Area Planning Commission staff regarding databases, software applications, and things like that. And we've walked away with that thinking like I think we got a pretty good handle on that side of things. And as well as you probably know, you've worked with some of the business analysts across for different projects. And so I'm working with them as well to help map all the processes that are related to zoning and the Board of Zoning Appeals, and how those processes interact with the different departments, so building department, code enforcement, DCI. And so hopefully what we can do is, as we map those out, look for efficiencies and how that process might work better. Because not only the whole ordinance overhaul is about making sure this works better for everybody and also less administration time. There is also revenue that goes with this. It's not much at times, and it can be variable because revenue comes from things like filing fees, improvement location permits, zoning verification letters, fines, which are zoning violations, subdivision requests, and rezonings. So 2017, there was approximately $25,000, and in 2018, $50,000. This is, again, it's not something you necessarily want to rely on, but it's certainly something that will come in through the process, and it varies based on how much development is happening. So staff capacity. Currently, DCI staff, members of my staff, do recommendations for different zoning-related matters. And we can continue to do that, but with the new staff, we won't have to spend that extra time because it will be being done in a cohesive way. The quick fixes have helped reduce zoning variances, for instance, and so that's been an administrative efficiency that we've been able to implement over time, and we hope to keep doing that. The zoning overhaul is also sort of a thought leadership role that the city's taken, and we really believe that our new zoning ordinance is going to be one of the best in the country, according to Mike DeVito, by the way. But
there you go. A little biased.
Yeah, he's a little biased, but I think he might be right. In the future, the new staff will help provide that day-to-day administration of the South Bend Plan Commission. And it helps free up existing DCI planning staff team to do strategic and neighborhood planning efforts. And I think, many of you may have seen on the news that we're working on the Near Northwest plan at the moment. It takes a lot of time and a lot of engagement. I've worked all weekend on this plan, and what I think is really neat about what we can do with the Plan Commission staff integrated within the city is have them play a direct role in these neighborhood engagement pieces, so that when we come to, for instance, remapping a neighborhood or how a plan fits with the comprehensive plan and all these things, that everybody has been engaged and really well engaged throughout that process, so that we have so it's as cohesive and clear as possible. Job descriptions. So I've emailed you a broader list of the things that these people will do, but this is just a short blurb about each one. The zoning administrator is primarily tasked with determining the use and how it fits in which zone or zoning category or district that a new project or what somebody wants to do and where it will fit. And that is also part of that role is dictated in state law as well. The zoning specialist, we hope, is a person who then does a lot of that day-to-day grunt work, writing some of those reports, helping out the zoning administrator to make sure that we get all that information to you in a timely way, but also to make sure that when we engage and talk to people who are looking to do things in South Bend, that we do a lot of that work with them to help them through the process. The administrative assistant is actually pretty important as well, because there's a lot of engagement that goes on. There's letters that go out. There's a lot of phone calls that happen. We got to make sure when we hit those timelines for advertising, and getting all those things right, because as you know, little clerical errors can cause delays, and we don't want to do that either. So that's an important part. Working together. John, you mentioned, working together with other agencies, and I don't think that's going to stop. Some of the governmental agencies that we work with, MACOG for state and federal funding opportunities, for instance, we work with them on the Coal Line Trail. They're helping us work on that. They helped work on our bike infrastructure as well. St. Joe County Parks Department, trail coordination again. Maine, South Bend County Library. We helped work with them to figure out how the renovations for the library work and the new building that they want to build. And I'm on a call with them almost every week to see what they're doing and help make sure that their plans work with us and that we move forward in a good direction. Engineering. Portage Avenue Bridge. That was going to be replaced with a guardrail that looked like a highway, and we stepped in to make sure that there was really good rail there, a wider sidewalk for pedestrian access up to the Martin's Plaza, lighting, and we worked together to make that happen. And the Area Plan Commission, we still will be working with the Area Plan Commission when it comes to annexations and how development just outside the city limits may incorporate or come into the city in a future date. In Mishawaka, for instance, we work with them on brownfield coordination. So we really do work with a lot of agencies already, and we do plan on continuing to work with a lot of these agencies. This is familiar with you. This is just the Plan Commission composition, and there's 9 members on the Plan Commission. These are how they get appointed. Again, state law dictates the membership of this. The Board of Zoning Appeals, 5 members. Also, the composition is dictated by state law. There's still some challenges and some progress that I'd like to talk about. We're still working with the legal department to determine the exact time and capacity issues and the impacts on current staff. But like I said, we've had these conversations already, and I feel like we're in a good place to feel good about moving forward with that. The innovation team is again helping us map processes and determine IT-related impacts. And most importantly, the new staff are critical in the coordination of these efforts. Again, we're trying to do things like the NNN plan at the moment, and there's other things like that coming up. So these two people will be helping answer a lot of the questions that we have still yet to be able to fully lock down. Progress to date, the quick fixes, we have a few more to come before the summer, and the zoning overhaul is in progress, and we hope to have a draft by maybe May or June. We're getting that reviewed currently by an external expert, a legal expert on zoning issues, so that when we get that draft back, it's been vetted at least once or 2 passes through that from a legal perspective as well, so that when we give it to our legal department, who we are also sharing it with now, that they don't have the burden of actually going through it, and they've had a lot of it tested already. So we're already trying to do things to reduce the things that the legal team and other teams have to do in order to make all this work. So, I think we're doing a pretty good job getting all these pieces in line. The time frame, so we'd like to hire the staff immediately because we want to make sure, as like I said, the goal of this is to create a smooth transition, and that takes time. We've been taking an incremental approach on a lot of things, and I think that's one of the things that has been one thing that's helped us and helped make sure that we do things in a good way. We want to have the draft zoning ordinance done by May, and that's on time. Our external and internal legal reviews are in progress, and hope to have that finished in April. With the zoning ordinance adoption, maybe in September. And these are things that we always will and have been in the past. We'll work with you guys to make sure that you're comfortable with those sorts of things, and any questions that you have, we'll do our best to answer. Commissioner selection and training, we think would best happen between October and December, because we want to make sure that those people who are appointed to those boards understand their role, what they need to look at, and the criteria in which they need to use to evaluate projects, and whether a zoning is appropriate or a variance is appropriate. And finally, that all of this and this ramp-up would take place so that on January 1st, 2020, that's when the Plan Commission would start officially, and projects from that point on would move through a South Bend Plan Commission. So with that, if you have questions for me that I can answer tonight, I'm happy to do so.
Council members? Okay.
Everything in committee, I was fine with the responses, the back and forth, so
I do
appreciate it.
Jake Teschka, and then...
Yeah, I apologize, I wasn't here for committee. So if this is answered, that's So say you hired the new staff immediately, right? And the plan is that this ordinance gets passed in September. Hypothetically speaking, it doesn't pass, what happens to that new staff?
So, right. So what we could do is, it really is part of the budgeting process at that point. If we feel that we're overstaffed in that capacity, we would not staff it in the future. But I do think that that we might find that there are either reasons to utilize them, or they could get reshuffled into other departments as well. Again, building department, one of the staff was part of the building department before, or code enforcement, or something like that. I think we'd have to work through that during the budget process.
Councilman Davis.
Yes, a couple of things. I saw the email and regarding the a resolution, the change of the name of this bill. And to me, the resolution of the Common Council of the City of South Bend approving a plan for the City Administrator to create a South Bend Plan Commission and Board of Zoning Appeals to separate this title doesn't represent what we are doing. And this could be, and I saw Bob's thing on the way in, the title doesn't...
I agree with you.
The title to me doesn't make any sense in terms of why this title versus you're talking about only hiring 3 people, but yet this plan could lead people to think that a completely different thing.
I agree, and that's why we had asked to change the name of the title earlier, and that there was some issues about advertising, I believe. Is that what it was, Bob?
Yes.
Yeah. We wanted to move the resolution through. It is a resolution. It only allows us to hire those 2 new people, and I understand that some might be confused about what the title says. But ultimately, it is just about hiring the two people. With the ordinance that needs to happen.
Is there a way, for the official record, that we can change that tonight?
The title has been...
It is amended.
Okay. I didn't see it. Okay, cool. And what's the official title then?
This one. There.
I didn't need to see it.
Want me to read that?
No, he's got a copy.
Okay. I can look at that one. Okay, that didn't make sense to me.
Okay.
Alrighty, and the last piece of it. I think that I understand the philosophy piece of it, but I think in explaining this, we probably should, first of all, with area plan issues, we are still having only a South Bend voice when it comes down to the final decision. Okay? Secondly, it comes down to the issue of, we are working with MACOG, Transpo, and many of the mayor's appointees don't have to live in the city of South Bend. BZA, they don't all have to be in South Bend. And so what happens is, through our zoning processes and other entities that we're working with, there's still a non-South Bend voice that's being shared and those kind of things.
Currently.
Currently. I'm talking about even in the future.
Well, I think the appointees that the mayor would make would be people who live in South Bend.
No. Not all of his, I'm talking about all of them currently, when we look at our dealing with the city of South Bend right now.
I'm not sure where they all live.
I understand. And so, but my point to you is that the issue of us saying that we only hear the South Bend voice, from that standpoint, we still will hear other voices from that standpoint. Just wanted to make that
I guess
clear.
it's possible that if that the mayor could...
Because in MACOG, you just mentioned in MACOG and all those other voices, we will still hear those kind of...
Oh, yeah, we'll continue to work with all those...
Yeah.
Yes, of course.
Okay, and that we are still... It doesn't change because of the fact that even if we kept the area plan, or we don't keep, we keep it now, the final voice is still the South Bend Common Council.
Sure. But, for instance, in the Area Board of Zoning Appeals, Mike Keene, a developer who is working in the Northwest neighborhood, near Northwest neighborhood, spoke about how when they were looking for a parking variance, people, he suggested this, sometimes people in the county who have a different idea about what is a proper amount of parking versus what it is in an urban area, and now you have a conflict of philosophy on that board, and they're like, well, in the county we have plenty of parking, and I can understand the neighborhood's concern about this when we can show that there is, maybe 3 parking spaces per every vehicle in the city, so we know that it's not a problem, and this causes debate and unnecessary debate and conflict that is just doesn't lead to a good outcome. So, luckily, what we've done is be able to change the rules to help smooth that out, but there are always going to be instances when these things come up, and I'd rather see people who understand what's trying to happen and to answer those questions.
Just one other comment on that is Kathy Schuthram and director also made a comment as there are times where she's making decisions on county. You know this as well on zoning that might not have the wherewithal or the understanding of why do I need to make a decision on county. It's a county issue and not fully understanding and appreciating what's going on in the county from a city perspective and vice versa on that. And maybe a majority, maybe a minority in making that decision for either a county or a city issue. So that was brought up today. I just wanted to clarify a little bit. So is there, John Vorty?
Yeah. Quick comment. You understand my reluctance to embrace this out of the box because I like to see things moving in the other direction, shared services and all that kind of thing, mostly for efficiency, but also for streamlining and making government work better for people. Bigger is not always better. I think now that I've had discussion with you and a couple of other folks that this makes sense. So I'm all for it. I know this ordinance is just for the hiring of a couple of people, but those couple of people, along with the third person, will probably started already looking at revising the zoning ordinance. I would ask that you extend an overture to Mishawaka. Maybe they would be interested in sending someone to these meetings, these preliminary meetings that talk about, how we're going to do things. We could learn from them, perhaps, and they could learn from us, especially if we're going to have one of the best.
Yeah, that's what we're shooting for.
Yeah, good. We've got blessed with a lot of developers who work not only countywide but regionally, and the easier we can make it for them, and maybe have an ordinance that is not only less cumbersome here in South Bend, but if it could somehow, maybe Mishawaka, maybe the county will pick up on things that we design, I think we'd all be the better off for it. The other thing I would like to see is that we can somehow, and hopefully you can work this out if you hopefully think it's a good idea between now and September, whenever this comes before us, that we can isolate the, say the budget for the South Bend Plan Commission, almost as a separate department, rather than get those numbers lost for professional services and all the other things in CI's budget. So that's what I would like to see, and hopefully you can work on that. So that's all I have to say.
That's your question?
Yeah. No, this is really a time for comment.
Could you work on that?
Glad to have you help out, John. If you're
I'll be happy to do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there any other questions at this point?
No questions.
No. All right, with that, we'll open it up to the public. Anyone from the public wishing to speak in favor of 1915, please come to the podium. No one from Andrews? Okay. Anyone wishing to speak against 1915, please come to the podium. Seeing none, turn it back to council. Any other comments or?
I apologize to the council. That was the time for questions, and I've made it the time for comments.
You had a question in there, actually.
Somewhere.
Yeah, well.
Anyway, I'm going to vote on this. Ms. Gordon.
Yeah, just overall, I too was hesitant in moving this to the city of South Bend and kind of walking away from our current structure within the Area Plan Commission. But quite frankly, over the last 6 months, I've really moved to a strong support of this. And I think while we're just talking about hiring tonight, that's very significant to me because I think this time frame from now until, the end of the year, having someone who is someone working the process as we actually redo the ordinance itself at the same time, if that person is going to convert to be the administrator, if that person or another person is going to convert, over and, be an assistant to that process, and even, relative to the inspection, some of the other stuff, we're packing in this hopefully, when it's fully rolled out, is I think that there's just a tremendous benefit to having those individuals on the ground working it now, so that, once we hit the first of the year, it's as smooth and seamless as possible. And not just for the benefit of our developer community, but I also see additional benefits with regard to the neighbors, right? Because in my opinion, all of this comes down to fit, and use of a particular property. And there's nothing more personal whether you've purchased a property and hoping, to build on that and kind of build out your dreams for that, or if you're an existing long-time property owner. There's just nothing more personal, right, I think. So getting this right it's important for the developer, it's important for the neighbors, and kind of this fit concept, in my opinion. But I think, too, in the end, as you say, these come to council. All of this everything prior to it coming to us is advisory. And I think, the better tools, the peak that I've seen is with the zoning ordinance. It looks like it's going to be more user-friendly. And frankly, when I first came on council, and still, there's a lot that is just outright baffling about our existing zoning ordinance. And I'm not a developer, but I'm a Joe citizen that just occupies this seat. And my ability to understand it at the citizen level, I think, is really critical. And so I really like this. I appreciate, one, that council asked the smart questions during the budget process and kind of put a, hold off on this, reveal a little bit more and let's kind of flesh this out a little bit more. I appreciate the time frame because I would have been a no vote. I would have been a no vote. So I agree. I love the time that we've taken. I think this ordinance packs in a couple things with regard to those individuals on these commissions, or the commission and the board, that they actually be properly trained annually in their duties, and that we hit that they're properly staffed, not just with the zoning administrator and the assistant, et cetera, and the folks who actually crank out the reports for the commission and zone board's benefits, but that there also be knowledgeable legal, and I at this point would like to see independent legal counsel, because I think in the end that everything before it comes to us is just a recommendation, and it's advisory. I think when it hits us, we had to be ready to go, one way or the other, an A or a nay on these. And I think the more we can work this out on the staffing side as a petitioner comes, the more we can, nail it down in the various the board and the plan commission, the better I think it'll come to us, basically ready to go. And then I think the smoothness of that process really does inure benefits to our entire community, that it's really understandable what you can do, where you can do it, how you can do it, and in the time frame that you can do it. And I think that will benefit us entirely as a community. So having said that, I think the question about, the budget impact on this, I think with better tools, i.e. an ordinance, with, proper, staffing that's on the ground, working with day-to-day, and we have more flexibility at the city level, I just think it'll open up investment opportunities that will be appropriate investment opportunities, and therefore good for the city of South Bend, good down to the fine grain level of the neighborhood. So I love all the changes that have been made in this, and I guess I'm just saying I'm a convert, and I look forward to the next, whatever months to really get down to the bigger pieces of this, the zoning ordinance itself.
Is there a motion?
You have a comment?
Well, so I think I was the one that originally brought up the financial impact of this, right? And so I think, Tim, thank you for answering that question, first of all. And second of all, I think in light of this broader explanation of kind of expanding and streamlining what we're doing here and retooling the ordinance, I mean, if our only argument is to have South Bend have a say, right? South Bend has a say on this body, but I believe in it. I also would have been a no vote, but now I believe in it just because of the increased efficiencies and some of those things that I just wanted to point that out because I brought up.
Good job. Your rookie status is now been revoked.
There you go.
So, and welcome to the dark side. So, no, I appreciate that comment. So, Vice President White.
I would just like to thank the Office of Community Investment and staff for really working through the issues and for listening to the council and others as well. This is a great example in terms of starting the process through the budget hearings. And so this process started, I would want to say, the spring and summer of 2018, in which, this particular proposal was brought forward to the council, but also with the budget. I'm very grateful that we're at this point where we are making changes that for the best, and that at the end of the process, and as we prepare for the month of September, we'll have a product that has been fully vetted, but also a product that will serve the citizens of the city of South Bend and our developers. I would want to make sure, though, during the committee discussion this afternoon, I raised a concern about oversight and enforcement and following through with the written commitment. So I would like to have a discussion with some of the members of community investment, but also with the council, so that we can have a better sense of what happens, after we have taken action as well. But at this point, I'm very grateful, and I really do like the work that you've done thus far.
Finally, I would like to just say I'm grateful that we slowed down this process. It was my recommendation last year at the budget process to delay this part of it. And now you see why I requested that. Because to have gone through the way we're going to go through, I don't believe have resulted in this kind of discussion, to look at the pros and cons and to help fine-tune everything that was being put in place. So I do believe that it is a better plan than what we had before us back in October, and I'm grateful for that.
Mr. Wardy?
I was just going to make a motion for adoption.
Can I make a comment before we do that? To the President. Thank you. I've been all for this from the very start. Too many times that we've had either zoning or APC from the county level come to us that didn't really fit, and this body has actually ruled against. There are cutting-edge things happening in the city, and it's no disrespect to anybody in the county or Mishawaka, Lakeville, or anywhere else, but there are a lot of things that are happening in the city that's going to move this city forward. Just in my neighborhood alone, there are plans for even tiny houses and zero-energy efficient homes, compact homes, which aren't even tiny houses, they're a little bit larger. And then other entities within the city that we haven't seen in a long, long time. I had a gentleman that was on the APC that didn't understand a restaurant can exist in a neighborhood where there's street parking. You don't need a slab parking that you have in Mishawaka. And you just couldn't understand that. Where you go to a lot of cities, I go back home to St. Louis, there are plenty of just wonderful restaurants tucked into neighborhoods, which adds character and life to those neighborhoods. And that's some of the things that Mr. Corcoran's doing, and Mr. Ford had vision for prior to that. Mike DeVita, yes, with his bright yellow tie. It's amazing what's going on in the NNN right now. You need to get by where there's 30, 40 citizens actually putting their feedback into things that they want to see. And Mr. DeVita and a lawyer sitting there actually looking at writing code that makes sense for the city. That it might not fit for Lakeville. It might not fit for Mishawaka. Well, Mishawaka has their own. Or somewhere else in the county. So there is that centralized thought and focus, and I do believe that the customer service will even be better when people can come and go, okay, you have this whole plan, you have all these people together to work together to make something good for South Bend. And a lot of this is changing in the city or around the country, and we're just now catching up to it. And I want us to catch up and stay with them or ahead of it very quickly.
Very quickly. Councilmember White mentioned the oversight and enforcement, and I think if I heard you correctly, and we did discuss it in committee, you specifically referenced with regard to commitments. I think I want to expand that as an interest, not just relative to commitments. There is just, basic need for oversight and enforcement with regard to zoning, and development. It's not fair, in my opinion, and it gives someone a leg up when in one block in a district you can do whatever you want and then ask for permission later, and then somebody else goes through the entire process asking for the appropriate, yays and nays all the way through. The neighbors are well informed. The rules, are abided by, but, there's no enforcement relative to the one who did it the right way and the one who didn't, so, or did and didn't. And I just think some consistency, some oversight and enforcement, and hopefully with all of these being the building department, the DCI, planning division, and this planning staff, this South Bend plan, I think that that closeness of that, I hope will get at some of these when there are these oversights or lack of enforcement, that will clean that up. Because once you get known for your lack of enforcement, all kinds of stuff follows. That's can be difficult for a city. But when you get the reputation that what's on the books is what we go by, then I think that word gets out there as well.
One more comment, I'll turn back to John for his motion. I did say during committee, for those who weren't here, a lot of this is prelude to what is going to happen between now and the end of the year. So this body will have a lot of feedback. I'm sure Oliver Davis, this will be coming through your committee on a lot of working progress on this, and there's a lot of us here to add details. So can't do any of it till we take this first step. So, Mr. Bordy?
I move for the adoption of this, this is a substitute or
Second substitute.
second substitute. It just moves.
Second. Ms. Fowler, roll call, please.
Councilmember Preston?
Aye.
Councilmember McBride?
Aye.
Councilmember Broden?
Aye.
Councilmember Teska?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Councilmember Gordon?
Aye.
Councilmember, Vice President White?
Aye.
President Scott?
Aye.
8 ayes.
Thank you. Entertain a motion to rise and join the committee of the whole.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you.
The committee of the whole is now in session. This is the portion of the council meeting where the full council meets as a committee. During each ordinance, members of the public will have an opportunity to speak either in favor or in opposition. Your comments will be limited to 5 minutes each. With that, will the city clerk please read bill number 6918?
6918, public hearing on an ordinance amending the zoning ordinance and seeking a special exception for property located at 2610 East Jefferson Boulevard, Councilmanic District Number 3 in the city of South Bend, Indiana.
Sorry. Okay. I just need clarification. In terms of 6918, it's only discussion at the council, committee of the whole, so there's no public input.
That's correct.
At this time. But council members can ask questions of the developer.
Of the petitioner.
Petitioner. But as far as public input, that occurred 2 weeks ago. I want to make sure I have a clear understanding. Okay.
Who is making a presentation?
There's no
There's no presentation.
Oh, yeah, back to council.
It's back to
Should they
council.
go over their commitments, though?
I
Well-
think they have the attorneys kind of read to
That was,
Oh, okay.
that's for council to ask if there's anything else to add.
Question?
Yeah. Yes, sir. Him or me, did you recognize?
Question. He was first. In terms of, you are working with the group, you are the people from Traces.
I'm the representative of the petitioner, the owner of the property.
I understand. There was a lot of letters that were written to us regarding the history of the organization in terms of their legal or other kind of challenges that they had in the state of Michigan. Are you aware of those? And if you are, could you please clarify what's going on with that, please?
I am not aware of it, but I have co-presenters with me who are members of that group, if you would like to hear from them.
I would prefer to hear from them then.
Hello, good evening, the council. Patrick Gerard, 121 Capitol Avenue, Battle Creek, Michigan. I represent the TIA Corporation.
Yes. In terms of, there have been several legal challenges that you have had to deal with in the state of Michigan that we were made aware of. What's caused those kind of things in relationship to the operations there, and how does that play into it here in South Bend?
Councilmember Davis, when you say legal challenges, the TIA Corporation has been in business over 18 years.
I understand.
Okay. Any current legal challenges at this
Well,
present time?
I work with, I'll start bringing them up. Give me a moment, and you can go on with them. I'll come back.
Is your question, how how we handled those challenges in the state of Michigan versus how we're going to handle those in South Bend?
No, that's not my question. I come back.
Okay.
I get them. You want specifics? Go ahead. Go ahead.
Mr. President, you were next. Yes.
I get specifics.
You want to wait?
Yeah, no, go ahead.
No, I understand that you submitted written commitments to amend your current bill
Yes, we have.
to the council.
Yes, we have.
Clerk Fowler, do we have a copy of all those?
What is that?
The written commitments?
We do, but we do have a copy of all the written commitments as of Friday, but myself and some neighbors met on Friday as well with Alicia, and there was a couple of other things that we've added. That final set of written commitments, I think, has been approved. We got a verbal agreement from them, and we talked to their manager.
That was for me.
On the phone.
That was for me.
But it has to go through their corporate office to add the changes.
Okay, so tonight, we're not going to accept the changes.
Why?
They can't.
We can't confirm it from their legal.
Yes, you can confirm it for me. The main change that they wanted is to build a privacy fence on the west side of our property. And the people in question, Alicia, and I believe this young lady here, and a couple of our neighbors, excuse me, who were there, I told them, no problem, I'll build the fence. I just don't have it in writing here tonight, and I will supply it to the council.
Councilmember White?
Yes, I have a question, and again, what is before us is dealing with the zoning, whether it's properly zoned for the work that is being asked of the council. So my question, and I did ask if this would be an appropriate question, it has been stated that in terms of any of the residents that do not, meet the requirements or do not pass their drug test, that they would be able to go directly to the upper room, which is another facility here within the city of South Bend. So my question is, what level of conversation has been held with the leadership of upper room? And what agreements, if any?
Can't answer that question, but
Thank you.
somebody up again.
Good evening, Alicia Brown. Brandon Adolph. Just to give a quick, I'll let you go ahead and talk about the relationship. They wouldn't go straight from our facility to the upper room. I apologize if that's what you understood out of that. That's not accurate. The relationship that we have currently with the upper room is just like a working relationship that we have with any other facility in our area. Meaning, we have sent people to the upper room, one client, we've taken them over for people to have interviews with. If it doesn't work out there, we look for other places for them to go, just like any other resource here in South Bend.
Because the reason why I'm asking that, some of us were at a meeting recently, and that issue came up in terms of whether or not there was any type of relationship with upper room.
Right, we do. I'll let Brandon talk.
Yeah, so Brandon Adolph, Executive Director, Choice Recovery, 2734 Sampson Street, South Bend. I've developed a relationship with them over the last year and a half. I primarily work with Lisa Stewart there. She's the case manager. She's actually a mother-in-law of one of my employees. So I originally met her. I had a meeting with them at the beginning of 2018 and also a meeting with them here about a month ago. In the past year and a half, I can recall about 4 clients that we have sent to them and also a client that they have referred to us. And we have also shared community resources.
Thank you.
I want to say thank you for providing me with that documentation, because after that meeting, I did follow up with you all, and like the same thing with me being a director, I don't know my staff have contact with Dismas House or anyone else, because that's my down the chain, so I don't know everybody who communicates with my staff, but you did provide that information to me today, so thank you for that.
Yeah, and just as an example, I'd like to add to that, I searched through my email, like you said. Most of my case managers handle the aftercare portion, so I don't always directly work with it, but I just searched upper room in my email history today and saw over, 30 emails in the last year that either been about us trying to send clients to the upper room or us communicating with the upper room.
And I'd like to add to that, it's very important in aftercare with any facility that we are working with other local resources. I think that's super important because when people go to those resources, you just want a working relationship, that they know where they can send clients and we know where we can send clients as well. We have a lot of respect for the upper room. Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you. Councilman Teschka?
I just wanted to clarify, Mr. Gerard, that the commitment that you're speaking of, or maybe you can answer it too, the commitment that you're speaking of that we don't have before us is in regard to the 3600 property?
Yes, that's our property, 3606.
Not the property that's before us tonight?
That is correct, sir.
We have them.
It's our adjacent neighbors.
Correct. I just wanted to make that clarification that we're not talking about the 2610
We are
property.
not. We are not. They asked me if I could build the fence. I said yes.
Okay.
Councilman Broden?
So what I'd like to do is just spend a bit of my time with getting at your commitments. I mean, I've assumed the record has been established per your presentation. We've had feedback from neighbors, but I want to just make sure there's clarity on your formal commitments. And prior to you addressing those, I would also just like to say that, you know, the privacy fence on the west of a property down the street has absolutely nothing to deal with what we as council are here to decide tonight. So you want to make that side deal at some other point. I want to focus everybody on this property and what you are trying to do. So
I do want the council to know, though, we're asked by our neighbors, okay?
I really, sir, don't want to hear that at this point. I do want you to go to the March 7th commitment. Is that the last and in sum total all of your commitments? The dated letter on March 7th, council received written commitments for the following. We serve the formal intention to do the following, and it's a...
Yes.
Okay, so this is it.
Yes, that was our formal and written commitment that we wanted to make to the council to clarify any of our meeting from the 25th. Okay. So those are been stamped and signed and put with your clerk. Yep.
Okay, so then these would be binding with the property.
Absolutely, for 2610 East Jefferson.
Okay.
And I just would like to clarify, thank you so much. We were asked for some commitments on both properties. We just wanted to make sure that was handled.
Yeah, that is not any part of my decision, and I think that really, frankly, kind of muddles the situation, and these are difficult enough.
Okay.
You know, in terms of
absolutely.
Rezoning and everything that's packed into this request.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Just some questions, and these, I want to get again at some certainties here. Well, actually, for the benefit of the community, I guess, one, a full installed security system with indoor cameras in common areas, as well as perimeter cameras for the outside. Two, a minimum 2 staff scheduled per shift. 3, 20-bed maximum capacity. 4, privacy fence along the southeast property border to provide ample privacy for our potential clients and neighbors. 5, considering use of Community Advisory Board to meet quarterly at a community location to gather and disseminate information and handle any related issues. That's your correct understanding, correct?
Correct.
Of where we stand. Thank you.
Correct.
So, some questions on specific. How will you file with the state of Indiana per this property? What filing applications will you fill with the state of Indiana on this property? And I need a specific...
Yeah.
I don't have that answer.
We'd like to bring up our legal for that, so they know how to do that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm, of course.
And I apologize, I wasn't clear.
Yeah.
I meant the written commitments for that property.
Right.
Anything else that...
Yeah.
For that property file.
For those following at home, I just want clarity.
Yeah.
Eric Bondack.
Right, we asked
Right, I
that.
understand.
Joe Grogan was one of them, so.
Last week.
The commitment specific to this property is what I want what I was seeking clarification on. They should be in writing because they are binding from this moment, if this passes from this moment on. Nothing with regard to other properties. Thank you very much, and I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Eric Bondack, 212 East LaSalle Avenue, South End. I'm legal counsel for Kia Corporation.
for the proposed purchaser.
We can't hear you.
I apologize. I'm the counsel for the proposed purchaser. There are no state certifications required for a sober living facility.
Certificate,
Right,
okay.
so there is no state licensing level that's required here. Unlike a treatment center where there would be, but not for a sober living facility.
And just to follow up, for clarity purposes, unlike a treatment center, actually is the standard and the operating license of the facility down the way.
That's correct.
Okay, so this is separate and distinct, no certification and no state licensing. However, is there not a regulatory or a report that must be filed with regard to what you are trying to do at this facility? In other words, and let me just ask it specifically, per my research, is it considered a supervised group living facility or not?
Is there a particular code that you're referring to, or from the Indiana Administrative Code?
This is within the Indiana Family and Social Services Administration, supervised group living facility or subacute. I'm looking to find it's a state form 48160.
For subacute?
No, that's or subacute stabilization facility. So I just am trying to get what you're trying to do here and what documentations you will file with the state of Indiana with regard to this property.
My understanding is that there won't be any licensing or reporting to the state of Indiana with respect to the operation of this facility. That's my understanding, but
That is my understanding also.
Okay, so second question then, please. Under what fire and life safety standards will you request the state of Indiana to review this and our local fire health safety inspection? What will be required? What will you be operating under for this facility?
Well, my understanding is that an architect has been consulted with respect to the layout, and that has been informed by the fire code and any other applicable regulations.
Okay.
But I cannot tell you specifically. I don't know the answer. If you have a specific regulation in mind, I don't have the answer to that question.
Well, that's kind of the confusion that I have right now in terms of what will be required to help to meet health and safety, because I'm not certain what you're applying for.
Well,
its distinction, it doesn't fall under a group home, right?
Well,
and some of the regulation of that.
It's a group residence.
And it doesn't fall under a group residence, I get that, but...
Yeah, so it's not a group home under the code, I believe, group residence.
Nor under our local zone, I get that.
And so...
But it is a group residence, and I would like to know the specific fire and life safety standards that your architect or whomever you're consulting with is reliant on. What actual codes are they reliant on?
Well, it would be any codes that would be applicable to any properties.
Okay.
I mean, the use is being requested today before the council with respect to how many fire alarms or exit doors that would be required by the code. That would be, a separate consideration, but those are things that obviously they would have to comply with in order to operate the facility. And so that would be a separate arm. The fire marshal, for example, would enforce those. So I think, that's, so we'll be developing the property consistent with all of those applicable laws and regulations.
Okay. And then, I guess, related to that then, if the applicable law and regulation is 70 square feet per the information that you had shared, 70 square foot per person, is that your understanding?
Yes, the
Okay.
architect, right.
For sleeping habitable space.
Right.
Okay. So that is your understanding, that is the current requirement?
The information, I think, was 70, which would allow up to 25 in that space, but we made a commitment to limit it to 20.
And how do you get to the calculation of 25? And this does get to occupancy for health and safety reasons. That's why I'm going down this line of questioning. How do you get to 25 on that?
So that would be, an architect would have to answer that question. I mean, that's not a legal question for me to calculate.
He took the total square, I did talk to him, he took the total square footage of the building with the information that we got from the fire marshal here in South Bend. 70 square foot per person per head, when the building was 25. We've reduced that down to 20. That will be the maximum on the building.
Okay. Now, my understanding is that that's not just simple math on the entire living space, if you would, or sleeping space.
And you are,
it is on a per-bedroom requirement.
and you are correct. You have two different, I want to call them codes here in the state of Indiana.
This is what I want you to get at.
Yes, and then I've already went through this with the architect. When you go through your fire department, your fire marshal, 70 square foot per head, per individual is in your sleeping space. When you go through your Divisional 1, Divisional 2 code, that this type of building and other comparable buildings in your area are under, they use 120 square feet per head, but they use your entire building. They don't take out your common areas, hallways, or anything. So you do have two different set of standards here. 70 square foot per sleeping space, 120 square foot per the entire building. Both of those right there, the one at 70 square feet per person, delivered 25 people maximum. The 120 with the whole building delivered a 26 person maximum. Once again, we backed this down to 20 beds maximum. We know we're underneath both those codes and laws that we have.
I would contend that you're still overstating what you can do in this space in terms of its safe livability, sleeping, overnight standards. When you look at the per room square footage, okay? I'm not talking about the whole. I think you've really gone to your occupancy level appears to be exceeding what the livable overnight space square footage would allow per person.
And I think to address that, the commitment is for no more than 20. But through the permitting process, fire marshal, if there are any limitations that would not allow for 20 livable, or 20 occupants, those regulations and laws would obviously kick in, and it could be enforced.
Well, here's the difficulty, though, I think that I have with the commitment as you've written here at 20. In some ways, if the council approves that, then there is almost a stamp of, we think this is a habitable working situation, right, that it meets self. So I guess what I would like to do is, rather than you're saying we were at 25 to 30 when you first started this, you came before us and said 20, and now you're firmly at, you came before us and said 25, but we'll do 20, and now you're saying a commitment at 20. I really think that we should be in agreement on whatever that per person space is allowed under fire and life safety standards in the state of Indiana, which, if it's 70 square foot per person, I would rather hold you to that rather than, if we're going to do a commitment, I would rather be specific about defined habitable overnight sleeping space.
I understand.
And the reason I think this is really important to get at is because it has implications for how we review and would to look at any other space within the state of Indiana, within our city. So if you have a bedroom that is measured to be 135 square feet, that really is not room for two people, it's really room for one person. So, and I see that, I guess I see that consistently within this is just the need to be very specific that not regard to an occupancy high or something that's, been moved down in response to public process, but I think we have to be very aware of what what our fire safety code law is, and you previously stated it at 70 square foot per person, and I guess I would like to hold you to that in those terms regardless, instead of your occupancy numbers. And I think if we were to really do the math on that, and you provided a plan, your occupancy would be drastically different than what you have put in your commitments. So I would rather focus on what the standards are, and you're meeting those standards, and not talk about how you configure this or that room.
Yeah, I think there's been an intention all along, obviously, to comply with all regulations and rules that apply to this property. So I know I think from the very beginning there were questions about the number of occupants. I know that early on that's been an issue. So it was an effort by petitioners to provide the council with information, and so we consulted with the architect, and the architect provided that drawing, which we provided to the council. So just trying to provide information based on that concern, but all along, obviously there's an intention to comply with the law and any requirements.
And I guess thank you for your clarification. I guess I want to state what you've submitted to council is not binding. So that's why I really want to get to is basically strike away your occupancy commitment in terms of a number, and actually get at the state, what is required within the state of Indiana relative to fire and life safety standards. So that is, one change in your commitments that I think is needed here. With regard, so that is one question, and thank you for going through that process, because all decisions that we make while they're to this property, when it's a rezoning, it really has impacts on other decisions that come before us. All right. So while it may be a little bit burdensome, I think it's important.
I hate to interrupt, but I have to excuse myself for a few minutes, and I wonder if you could take over. I'll be right back.
No problem.
You all right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then with regard to, licensing, with accreditation. So licensing and accreditation can be one and the same thing, right? This does not have any licensing or accreditation requirements. But I heard in our previous meeting that there was an interest in, after a year's operation, we would apply to meet X standards.
Right. So,
accreditation. Could you clarify what that is?
Sure. I think there's a difference between the licensing by the state and then accreditation. And there is accreditation. I can't speak to that, but it's general.
And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to lump those together. I do know the licensing's on the front end. The accreditation is, after up and running, and it's basically a scorecard.
Sorry, the accreditation standard that, we've spoken about in the past and that Choices currently has is CARF accreditation, Center of Accreditation for Rehab Facilities. And that's something, that Choices, like I said, currently has, and that we would look at adding once we've been in operation for at least 1 year. You can't even apply for that until you've been in operation for at least 1 year.
Now, given that, is that an appropriate accreditation standard to aim for, though, given the difference in this facility and what you're trying to do?
Well, they look at the facilities differently, and your facility would be accredited on multiple different levels. For instance, Choices Recovery currently, it's accredited for detox, residential treatment, PHP treatment, IOP treatment. So there's a lot of different, steps that go into that accreditation process. It's not just one broad accreditation that covers everything.
So with regard to your accreditation that you are hoping to get a year out from this, where would it follow? Is it basically an outpatient level?
No, it wouldn't have any, there's no services being provided there. To be licensed as an outpatient, you have to actually provide services there. We would look for accreditation for like a sober living accreditation.
Okay. So this particular property is not a partial, let's say, it's not a detox.
No.
Let me say what it isn't, and then, correct me. It's not a detox. It is not residential. It is not partial hospitalization.
No.
Nor is it an intensive outpatient program.
These clients would be attending intensive outpatient classes at Choices Recovery. This building would just be their living space.
So is it an aftercare program?
Yes. It would be very similar to an aftercare program, yes, but they would be living and residing there. Basically, to break this down for you in layman's terms, it would be basically getting this accreditation through CARF is getting an endorsement. It's an endorsement that we're doing the right thing. It's an endorsement that we're about the right thing. And it's having 2,000 questions come at us that we don't have to necessarily answer, but we want to, because we want to show that we're doing the right thing. So it's an endorsement. That's what we want to have.
And then my last question is, if your main this is to me a satellite in some regards, right? You are at a main hub, and you enumerated, I think we all know what you're serving down the road, okay?
Yeah.
This is a satellite of that. Zoning is forever. So, it's forever until somebody comes and makes this whole
I was going to say, we hope it's not forever. We're here for a
whole different process.
So you have a special exception.
Yeah, but to my question then is, if your main location fails, goes under, doesn't meet accreditation standards, okay, what can be or will be fulfilled in terms of services to the community at this standalone location?
At this time, I'd like to turn that over to Patrick Gerard, because he knows what our futures look like between him and Brandon. So I'll let you guys go ahead.
So the question is, if our main operations, Choices Recovery, fails, what happens to this building? Is that the question?
Yes.
Well, at that point in time, if I had no clients to put into that building, I'd probably have to put the building up for sale. That'd be the only answer that I could give you. There's sober living that we could offer to other residents in the community, whatever, and other people from other areas coming out of rehab that would need these services. But our main push and our purpose with this is our clients are coming out of the 3606, okay, East Jefferson building and our surrounding community.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. McBride?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank all of you all for coming before council and then whatever we've asked and the stopping of the delay for you guys to go back to the community and to get additional information. With me actually building a work release facility myself, one, it's not accredited, nor does it have to be. We fall under the DOC standards. However, I could become an accredited, but we fall under the auspice and operate as though we were so, to be evidence-based and performing at the highest level. So, falling under the DOC umbrella, I understand about you have to be licensed to occupy. There's a difference. There's also a difference. I'm in the middle of 5, people's lawsuits, whether it be true or not, it happens. You can sue someone every day, and I remember the information I believe that we got. I recall that it had complaints from 2011 and 2008 prior to your 4 years of being, so I'm just trying to answer some questions that I'm remembering that was thrown out. Secondly, I would hope that had you known that, you were asked about square footage and occupancy numbers, that beforehand you could have provided that, because not being an architect or a fire marshal yourself, that's a hard number to come up with without you knowing in advance. And I would have helped you try to be a liaison for you to do so. And I know lastly, at the last meeting that we did have, although we're not talking about your current location, it is reflective in the minutes that the council did ask for you guys to make commitments at your former location as well. So I just wanted to be reflective on record that that was asked of you. So I appreciate you providing that information as well. So it is a hard number for you not to be an expert in architectural fire marshal to give out a number when you're not aware of. So what I can say in my profession, and going to the 3rd District and talking to the people of the 3rd District, that they are in support of, and I am in support of. We have a lot of the things that we talk about, the opioid crisis that we have now, and very relevant in what we're doing. And looking at the criteria, as my interpretation is that I am in support of it, that it falls under that auspice of what I'm tasked to do. So I appreciate you, and I will be in support.
Questions right now? We'll come back to comments afterwards.
Comments afterwards, okay.
All right.
Oh,
No more.
you know what, I do have a question.
Yeah,
It seems like at the last presentation, and I just want clarification on this, somebody had made, and I don't know who it would be to talk about it, comments about looking for other sites.
I
And
did.
so I'm curious about that. Who could speak on that?
I can.
Okay.
So again, ma'am, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Brian Adolph. I have Sheila Klogelski here in the building with us today. She was our realtor from Cressy Everett Realty. I know last meeting and I talked about me and her have been looking for multiple months, 3 or 4 months, and thinking back on it, this actually goes back prior to a year from now. We tried to make a deal go through on an apartment complex here in South Bend over a year ago. So we've been looking for quite some time. It's been very difficult to find a building that fits what our needs are and is in our price range. As you can imagine, we're looking for mainly occupancy of bedroom space, right? We don't need a garage. We don't need a full kitchen. And most of those things, don't come with a normal property. And the things that don't have those things, a lot of times they're very large apartment complexes, that can be out of our budget. So we've been looking for quite some time.
Mr. Davis.
Yes, while my colleague did reference the fact that some of the legal matters happened in 211, I think the difference between her location that's pretty much out, not near any neighbors, is different. Is when you have to have something, and it's a public facility. It's different from when you are a private facility coming into a neighborhood. So I would like that to happen. And speaking of that, when neighbors and other people send to us issues regarding what happened and with the TIA Corporation in 211 and those kind of issues from that standpoint, and because neighbors take the time to do their homework on you all too. And so I think it's only fair, unlike anybody, whether it's 211 or 212 or even if it's in the 1700s, whippity-do. I just think that if somebody's moving next to you and there's some legal references that they can literally go to their cell phones and find on that, I think it's appropriate that you can at least speak to that from that standpoint, because this is public record. And when they look at the case here, Narcodon Freedom Center, with that, And they list a lot of the different things regarding this gentleman and the care that was not given to him, as quoted, that was alleged in the plaintiff here, and his care and how he was not supervised and many of these other kind of things. You are aware of these kind of things that they can find. What could be your response to neighbors' concerns that when they send those to us or raise us? What would be, several of them are out there now listening to your response, so what would be your response?
Can I answer the first question there? Narconon Freedom Center. TIA Holding Corporation is a real estate holding corporation. It is a landlord. It owns the Choices property on 3606 East Jefferson. TIA leased that building to the Narconon Freedom Center. Had nothing to do with the TIA Corporation. Once again, we're the landlord of that particular property. We didn't own the business. We didn't operate the business. We were the landlord of it. To go to your second question, what am I willing to do here in the neighborhood? We went to every neighborhood group, business group, city council. We've invited everyone that we can into our center personally for a tour, answer the questions, come on down to this building. No different than this forum that we are having here. Make no mistake, we understand the sensitive nature of this. We understand the immediate community around us. That's no different than we've reached out to these other people and they've called the center because of the publicity and outreach that we're doing. We want to make this work. The only way we can, Councilman Davis, is to bring these people in, find out these concerns. What are these fears and how do I solve that particular problem? Right? I believe we've given it everything that we can to accommodate our immediate neighbors. And that's where I'll leave it on that.
And so therefore, in terms of these kind of legal matters, you and your attorneys have responded?
Oh, yes, to each and every one of them.
Okay.
Each and every one of them. We have, to the best of my knowledge, when you're 2012 or 11, there's nothing current at the present time.
I understand.
Okay.
I understand there's nothing current. I would like to say, we have to ask all these questions, so with all due respect, to say that you don't have to answer these kind of questions, is, no, to the young lady what's standing next to you, was, we do need to answer these kind of questions. You made a comment that, when my colleague was speaking, about, you don't have to answer these kind of questions, all these thousands of questions being responded at you. So it was a little disconcerting when you said that.
No, sir, I'm sorry, I don't remember stating anything like that, and I apologize. I do believe that these questions are necessary. I just don't think that I can personally answer them.
That's fine. I appreciate that apology. All right, thank you.
Any other questions? No? Seeing none. One more.
Is there a doctor on this site? And I just want clarification. The last meeting, information was provided about the other location. So is there a doctor on site? And then,
Which site are you referring to, ma'am?
on your petitioning site? The site you're petitioning? Yep.
No, there would not be a doctor on site there.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So this is in council portion only. With that said, is there any other questions for the petitioner at this time? Seeing none. This time we will take comments. And we'll start with the 2nd District and work our way down.
Okay, thank you. This was a really interesting deliberation for me. It reminded me, and I think others possibly, there's been a lot of conversation about another highly contested and very emotional issue when we previously. So there was a lot that I had to think about in terms of, I think it's really important that, in these times that as an elected official we can be consistent. I think that's extremely important. And that we do our due diligence to think about, whatever our decisions are going to be, that they're consistent, but over time, but they're also consistent with the laws. And so in thinking about that previous decision, a lot of things seem very similar here. But there was one important difference, and that's why I asked about the issue of other locations. In the previous situation, there was a request for rezoning, and one of my real questions was, well, do we have to rezone this particular site, are there any sites close that already contain the zoning, have the zoning that you needed? And in that particular case, there were quite a number of other spaces very near to where that particular site was, the petitioner was requesting. So based on that, which to me was really about zoning, although, like I said, that particular issue was also a very highly emotional, there were moral issues around it, there were people, this is long-standing kinds of disagreements about a moral issue. But this decision isn't about a moral issue. It is about zoning. And so for me, the impassioned testimony that we got in our previous meeting was very impactful, very insightful. I learned a lot, actually on both sides. And I was moved on both sides. But again, my decision tonight is really based on the zoning issue again. And I just feel that while I do agree with the need, as Councilwoman White talks about, to have, we have to live up to our values. If we're seeking solutions to different things like the opioid crisis and so on, we have an opportunity here to open up a facility that's going to at least address it in some manner. I do agree with that. I also agree that I understand, I should say, the concerns of neighbors. That, we have to take that into consideration because these are the people ultimately that we're elected to represent. In this case, what I heard is that there are a lot of neighbors for this, and there's a lot of neighbors there are also some neighbors who are against. But again, the decision must be based on zoning. I think one of the really significant things for me, and I'll wrap up because I don't need a platform for this, is that it seems as if the petitioners had sought other places. They could not find anything to meet their needs, that this is an appropriate use for this site. And so, therefore, I will be voting in favor of the petitioner's request.
Ms. McBride?
Yes, just as I stated before, looking at the 5 criteria, it meets my definition with the group residence permitted as a special exception, and it's defined as a residential facility providing any combination of food, shelter, personal care, social services, counseling services, or transportation to residents, or a residential facility providing common living areas such as kitchen, living room, dining room, or recreational rooms. Group residence would include halfway houses, work-release houses, or other similar form of residential facility for individuals which do not qualify as a family or any other form of residential facility expressly provided for in its ordinance. And that would what I would stand to support.
Thank you. Ms. Broden?
So looking at the criteria with regard to rezoning, and specifically related to the comprehensive plan, there's a couple concepts here that I think are important. One is the concept in our existing code and relative to adjacent uses. We put in goals of buffering and transitions, okay, relative to these uses. We also have some concepts with regard to when we look at uses that we try to cluster those uses. And in this case, I think there is a cluster that exists in this block, in this square block. It continues down Jefferson, and in this particular situation, it is an office buffer. The current rezoning is office buffer. I think the maintenance and the integrity of that district within our code, separate and distinct from office, high-intense office use, separate and distinct from residential use, is a district worth maintaining. And it plays an important role in our lineup of uses. And this is similar to arguments that I have made before. And that gets to the whole concept of compatibility with regard to uses. Also within our comprehensive plan are the thoughts, and this was actually in the petition and even the evaluation by the Area Plan Commission on this, having housing, residential options within the district to meet the needs and services. I think there's also sufficient documentation in our comprehensive plan that would suggest sufficient choices and availability, and specifically a duty to promote healthy and a diversified economy, both at the neighborhood level and at the city level. And there are some distinct benefits that come from that. Fosters competition. It provides opportunities for employment and for entrepreneurship. And it also gives us a broader area to, a footprint, if you would, where existing businesses can be retained and new ones, can be recruited. So the fact that it is an office buffer district, and I guess I want to move to the current conditions and character and uses in each district. In the application, the petitioners stress that it's multifamily and residential adjacent uses. That's specifically within the petition. Not indicated not indicated in this whole petition process is that the property adjacent to this to the west is an office buffer property. And in fact, I believe the petitioner even implied that that was a residential property. But nonetheless, the zoning is the zoning. And what we are being asked to consider is basically establishing a use when to the left, or to the west and to the east are office buffer properties. And I'm very concerned about that. That to me is going toward almost spot zoning. And I know you're asking us for this, but I think the established use, there's actually a couple established uses. One is that corner of that block, the corner to the east in that block is office buffer, and then the corner adjacent to the railroad track is office buffer. So, and then that's actually replicated in the next block as you go further east. So I think there is some established patterns here in terms of office buffer, and I think it's serving some important functions. And it's essentially getting to those concepts in our comprehensive plan of buffering adjacent uses. So, and then I think the reliability of a business that comes in and wants to make an investment or has made an investment, to be able to make good, sound business decisions, you want to be reliant, on the property that's to your left and to your right at a very minimum, and its current zoning. And so I think in terms of, there's plenty of established uses as office buffer. There's also established residential and a variety of residential uses that could fulfill the petitioner's needs in the district. I do think changing, like moving away from some of these concepts in our comprehensive plan and basically obliterating the office buffer designation and our development and our community's reliance on that, I think that's going down it's a slope that I don't want to go down. in terms of most desirable use and the conservation of property values, I know that we are to look at the best use for the city and the community as a whole. And I guess my opinion on this is you're asking for a big change here, that we allow residential to be interjected into established office buffer or small business use area. And I guess within our overall code, there's a reason that by right, if as petitioners you wanted to do this in a single family or in a single family 2 area, you wouldn't even have to come before this council. So I do think, and there's a reason why it's excluded from office and OB in our current code. And outright in office and a special exception in OB, which you are, here as petitioners to do. You would have by right the ability to locate this in a single family 1 or a single family 2 district. With regard to the proposed use, I do feel that it will be injurious to public health and safety and comfort. And I'm basing this on the occupancy questions, my line of questions, and your responses relative to those. In that I think the occupancy rule is exceeded per the sleeping space that is in our health and safety codes within the state of Indiana. And then in terms of adverse effect, I do believe that this council has heard information relative to property values, and I'm not talking about perceived, I'm talking about actual. And that gets to and I guess I'm moving more into the special exception at this point in my comments, because when we move from the rezoning, we're looking at our decisions impact citywide. When we look at the special exception, we really take a more finer look and really have to look at the adjacent properties, the effects on adjacent properties. And I would say that this council sufficiently heard information relative to the difficulty of making investments, acquiring loans, relative, and the challenge historically that this area has encountered. And I guess, we've also heard the difficulty of attracting employees. And I guess what my point on this property value is, when you make a business decision in the city of South Bend to acquire the property, to improve on a property, my inclination is, again, you buy that property with a certain understanding of what's to your left and to your right and maybe behind you. And I think, for the various reasons that I've indicated, is that if we were to approve this rezoning, it in some ways turns on its head some of our fundamental concepts about what we know works for neighbors and neighborhoods and what we know works for our business community. That's not to say that I don't appreciate the services or your quality of services as a petitioner, but that I have to set aside because that has really no bearing on my decision. Again, because zoning is permanent. My last point is the rezoning would be best retained as the central business district, and I would not confer favorable with regard to the special exception. Additionally, for the reasons related, or primarily for the reasons related to occupancy, I think you have overstepped that per person square footage. And I think that does get to safety and health issues that we as a council should be primarily and fundamentally charged with overseeing, especially if there's a lack of regulatory or accreditation services with regard to this type of facility in state law.
Thank you. Mr. Teshka.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go probably in a backwards order from my council colleague, Councilman Broden. As we have heard tonight, this is a zoning issue, nothing more, nothing less. However, since it's been brought up, I would like to say thank you to Mr. Adolph, Ms. Brown, Mr. Mr. Gerard, thank you, for being in this business, right? For helping addicts, for helping people overcome this scourge. People like a very dear loved one of mine, and like so many of ours, who need these services. A loved one of mine who we had in and out of dozens of detoxes and treatment centers, and at the time had no real sober living facility to take them to. And had we, I believe he may have found his tenuous relationship with sobriety a bit sooner than he did. Also, thank you for going through this process. As Councilmember Broden pointed out during our previous resolution about the South Bend Planning Commission, in the past there's been some disparity between people who go through the process and people who just kind of set up shop and do what they want. And I can tell you right now in this community, there are organizations, not-profit organizations, setting up shops in our neighborhoods, doing what they want. They're doing sober living facilities, doing what you're doing, who are not inspected, they are not zoned, they are not staffed 24/7, they are not in any way accredited, and they are not coming before this body to get any type of approval. And it is my understanding that these facilities would be a special exception under the single family designation. I've not heard an argument against this that's held up in my mind. The traffic argument was debunked when Mr. Adolph affirmed that these residents would not have vehicles, right? The idea that this corporation has had lawsuits, this realty corporation has had lawsuits. Well, I've never been involved with an organization or a corporation that has not been sued. I sit on the board of Transpo. I have a business background. Everybody gets sued, right? It just happens. If you're out there and doing business, you get sued. The fact that this is a for-profit, we're supposed to somehow look less favorably on it when, my doctor giving me radiation for my cancer is making a profit, and at the end of the day, if he's saving my life, I'm okay with it. The fact that this is an alien or foreign corporation from Michigan, which Battle Creek is closer to us than Indianapolis, it makes no sense. And they used a local realtor, a local lawyer, right? These are they're part of our community. So let's be honest. I think the argument here is the fact that we don't want addicts living in this particular building, right? And as a council member, that's something. As a council member looking at this, that's something that I'm supposed to be prohibited from viewing. And so what I look at when I look at that map is 3 parcels that are designated office buffer in a sea of multifamily. And when I made a phone call to the planning team last week and asked them, tell me about this office buffer. What is the particular reason, right? The planning team told me there's really no particular reason why this parcel or group of parcels is zoned OB. And OB is really just used as a light, a less intense office use that tends to keep the facade of a residential place, right? Tends to, places like a chiropractor's office or consulting business. Other special exceptions may be a video store or a hobby shop or music store, those types of things. So looking just at that, right, tells me that I think we can move this zoning to multifamily, which in reality, if I go back to the history of this property, it was likely a residential property to begin with, right? And so, in my mind, right, then we come to the special exception, which is, of course, where the rubber meets the road here. And again, unless you're looking at the argument of we don't want these types of residents living here, I don't think we can make that call. So I'm in favor of this. And again, thank you for going through the process. Thank you for being willing to be in our community and provide this desperately needed service.
Mr. Davis.
In terms of the idea that our staff at the zoning would say that there's no reason why our office buffer is in place, to have that as a reason kind of goes against the whole zoning process, because of the fact that if that's no reason, then why do we have zoning? If there's no reason why they put it there, just go ahead and change it. There has to be some reason that was there. I'm sorry that the people who talked to Mr. Teska was not able to give him a better understanding of that, because of the fact that to just change things and say there's no reason for it, then they should have come to this council to make that decision. And I hope those kind of decisions will be cleared up as we continue to work with our zoning process, because there are reasons why we have our zoning. And when they are changed, there has to be changed, whatever the reason. We have to look at the conditions like we have out here and to see what's the most desirable use. I really think that the idea of having an area plan commission for South Bend, I hope one of the key things that will be added to that will be the concept of our economic development, our community economic development, to help find locations that are within zoning laws. For me to sit up here and say that with this whole city, there was not one place available for that, and our people who in our area plan on our zoning commissions or our CID did not help them out with that, is shocking to me. Because we don't have enough places for this, then we need to look at that and look at areas across our city where we can make sure that we don't have to have special exceptions for programs like this. For every time a new program like this is there, we have to ask for special exceptions. There's something wrong with that if that is the case. And so, we need to look at a variety of issues to see that, because all these issues here, the most desirable use and everything else, are at risk, in my opinion, if we don't take care of this. So I will not be supporting this event.
Mr. Vorty.
Focusing on zoning criteria after extensive discussions with other council members, I tend to agree with council members Davis and Roden, and will not support the petition.
Ms. White.
Zoning, as I have stated, historically has really been the most difficult decisions or discussions that we've had since I've been on this council. And looking at what is before us, the decision must be based on land use consideration and not the characteristics of the potential residents. And so again, as we begin to look at the rezoning, the special exception, we're looking at if this is the best desirable use of the land that is before us. No one, I believe, is really feeling as if that we're saying that this service or the services that would we provide, that they're not wanted, that they should not be in our community, because that would be a misstatement. The question before us, is this the most desirable use? And as we look at the standards before us, we have now 8 members of the council members that are present, and the interpretation of that may vary. And as you're hearing now, as council members are stating the reasons why they're in support or the reason why they cannot support the rezoning of the special exception, again, we're looking at the standards that have been given before us. But I think it's very clear, hopefully, that I don't believe there is a council member who is saying that we believe that this service or the services that you have provided and will provide is not needed, or nor is it not wanted. Would like to thank the petitioners for the work that you've done, for responding to all of the questions, and also the passion that you have in terms of the work that you are doing. I think it is unfortunate that another site could not be identified. And I also heard that it was not only finding a reasonable site, but there was a cost factor with that as well, and the size of a possible facility. So as we move forward, I think that we as a council, as we continue to look at zoning and special exceptions, that we need to have a different level of conversation, that we can look at all of these areas, and we may not agree, but it's not, hopefully it's not on a personal level. And so at this time, I will not be supporting the petitioner's request.
And finally, I will,
Before you speak as president, can I have Clerk Fowler clarify the discussion that we had last week, so I can process it? Do you have information for Clerk Fowler?
For me?
no. Karima?
Yeah, could you clarify the ask that we had last week?
Oh, it was about the written commitments?
Yes.
Well, just to clarify, there were 2 sets of written commitments, and the written commitments were, the second request of written commitments was for choices, and that choices is the, primary location? Huh?
36.
So that's the primary location, and a lot of the people that came on the floor at the last council meeting, their concerns were about choices, because however the activities going back and forth with the group home and choices, so that was why there were 2 sets of written commitments, because council members asked questions about it. So that's clarity on the 2 sets of written commitments. And so the group, I think there was a group of individuals at Walnut Grove, and then some of my neighbors, their parents live at Walnut Grove. So the separate meetings what Alicia had with both groups, and that's where the 2 sets of written commitments came from.
When was that meeting? When did that meeting occur?
They met several times,
Okay.
but the group that came at the last council meeting, some of the ones that were up front were my neighbors that were talking, but they went down to the meeting at Walnut Grove with Alicia. But then we also met on Friday, this past Friday. So that's where the 2 sets of written commitments came from. Because one set of written commitments were for choices, for the, what is that, the main?
The main facility.
The main facility, and the other set of written commitments were for the site in question. So that's why there were 2 sets of written commitments, so that's just clarity. But I know that Alicia and her team met with all my neighbors and also met with the individuals down at Walnut Grove.
Thank you.
And there was not, I think some of this confusion is because of the committee meeting when we ran out of time at the last meeting, we only had the hearing that night. But there were 2 sets of written commitments for that reason, because they talked about being good neighbors, and they wanted to make sure that things were good at both sites, because questions came up about both of the locations. And I think council members even asked for police records and a bunch of stuff, but all the things that they were council members were asking for, which is on the record, was about the original site, because they wanted more information on the original site. And that I know of, I met with them, my neighbors met with them, and they met collaboratively and groups.
Thank you for the clarification. Thanks.
All right. My final comments, I'm going to be consistent with special exceptions as I have in the past, especially one large one that we had earlier this year, or last year, on special exceptions. I do want to say that I appreciate the petitioners coming forth. If this does not go forward, that you continue to look. I suggest you work with DCI as well. Sometimes working with our Department of Community Investment can make these things go a lot smoother up front. At times, a lot of expectations are put out before understanding the full process and how things are handled with council. So I encourage you guys to do that if this doesn't go forward. At this point, It is not against anything that you guys are doing. We commend everything that is being done. As I've said in other special exceptions, if this does not pass, please look at DCI to look at other options. That's crucial, because if the work continues, getting over that hurdle will happen, I'm sure. So at this point, the motion needs to be made.
May I clarify my comment?
No, we're moving forward. This time I have the floor. At this time, the motion needs to be made either favorable or unfavorable, as this is committee of the whole.
I move this bill unfavorably.
With a favorable recommendation?
Second.
Actually, recognize Regina first. Regina, would you please repeat that?
Motion to send to the full council with a favorable recommendation.
Second.
All right, vote is favorable. We will just do roll call right off the bat. Ms. Fowler?
Councilmember McBride?
Aye.
Councilmember Broden?
Nay?
Councilmember Teschka?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Nay.
Councilmember Gordy?
Nay.
Councilmember White?
Nay.
Councilmember Preston?
Aye.
Councilmember Scott?
Nay. Sir, that's defeated. Is there another motion?
Okay. Go ahead. You good.
We need a motion unfavorable or no, well, we gotta have unfavorable, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I move that this go to council unfavorably.
Second.
Ms. Fowler, go ahead, roll call.
Councilmember Broden?
Aye.
Councilmember Teschka?
Nay.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Councilmember Gordy?
Aye.
Vice President White?
Aye.
Councilmember Preston?
Nay.
Councilmember McBride?
Nay.
President Scott?
Aye.
35.
I entertain a motion to, join the, full committee, or the full council.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Ms. Fowler, third reading, 6918, please.
Third reading?
Yep.
Bill 6918.
6918. Third reading on an ordinance, amending the zoning ordinance for property, amending the zoning ordinance and seeking a special exception for property located at 2610 East Jefferson Boulevard, Councilmanic District, number 3, in the city of South Bend, Indiana.
Move for that this bill be defeated, right?
Yep, second.
Councilmember Teschka?
Just be clear, the motion is for the bill to be defeated, correct?
Correct.
Nay.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Councilmember Gordon?
Aye.
Vice President White?
Aye.
Councilmember Preston?
Nay.
Councilmember McBride?
Nay.
Councilmember Broden?
Aye.
President Scott?
Aye.
5-3. Motion defeated.
Okay, next. First read.
Thank you. Ms. Fowler, would you please give first reading to 0719?
0719, first reading on an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, for budget transfers for various departments within the City of South Bend, Indiana, for the year 2019.
Entertain a motion to send this to Personnel and Finance for 325.
Second, so moved.
Second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Thank you. 0819, please.
0819, first reading on an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, appropriating additional funds for certain departmental and city service operations in 2019 of $25,000 from the General Fund 101, $3,469 from the Studebaker Oliver Revitalization Grant Fund, 209, $672,852 from the Economic Development Grant Fund, number 210, $2,300,000 from the DCI Federal Fund, 212, $200,000 from the Liability Insurance Premium Fund, 226, $160,000 from the Local Road and Street Fund, 251, $85,580 from IT and Innovation /311 Call Center, number 279, $24,945 from the Indiana River Rescue Fund, number 291, $2,518 from the Kowalski Bond Debt Service Reserve Fund, number 317, $251,475 from the County Option Income Tax Fund, number 404, $32,500 from the Economic Development Income Tax, number 408, $670,001 from the Major Moves Construction Fund, number 412, $5,117,400 from the 2018 TIF Parks Bond Capital Fund, number 452, $500,000 from the 2017 Parks Bond Capital Fund, number 471, and $415,500 from the 2015 Park Bond Capital Fund, number 751.
I move this be set for second and third reading, public hearing on 325, and sent to the Personnel and Finance Committee.
Second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Thank you. 0919.
0919, first reading of an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, appropriating additional funds for certain departmental and enterprise operations in 2019 of $200,000 from the Consolidated Building Fund, number 600, $1,715,669 from the Waterworks Debt Service Fund, number 625, and $600,000 from the Storm Sewer Fund, number 667.
I move that this be set for the second reading, third reading, public hearing on 325, and sent to Personnel and Finance and Utilities Committee, being that it's enterprise.
Sure.
Okay, well, that's the motion.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Sounds good. Is there any unfinished business? Seeing none. Any new business?
Just announce the mayor's coming tomorrow.
Tomorrow night, the mayor's talking. 6 o'clock, Morris. You're all invited. You all have, actually reserved seats. How about that? Again, I'll bring up at the Near Northwest Neighborhood Association, they're going through their master plan. Their Charette Opticos from Berkeley, California is in. Literally incredible engagement from the citizens, as usual for the NNN. A lot of input on what they want, housing, business, walkability, bikeability, everything like that, quality of life issues. So if you have a chance to go by, they're there today, tomorrow, and then I think Wednesday. And then they'll be back in April to do the same thing based on what they find. So a lot of citizen input. It's basically citizens figuring out what they want for their neighborhood, which is really good. So, okay. Privilege of the floor. As a veteran, do I need to repeat? You only have 3 minutes.
Samuel Brown, 222 East Nebraska. I come to you tonight, Mr. Scott, I would like for you to draft a letter to the South Bend School Board, to Mr. Ornella, that they've been trying to partner up with the South Bend community. And what we're requesting is that your meetings are set up by a certain statute of the law. You have to do it on a certain day, we understand. Okay. Now, where I'm going with this at, it used to be, and I messed it up, I'm not blamed for it, because the previous board members changed it to the same night you guys were having your meeting. And that was to make sure I was at the meeting beating up on them. So now that board is gone. We're trying to revive the South Bend School, and we got knowledgeable people like Virginia Preston, and his wife, who's a veteran and used to be on the school board. They need your input to save our schools. Simple as that. They can't do it by themselves. So by going and having the freedom where you can go to the council meetings and go to the school board meetings, you can give them a lot of knowledge. I went downstate and talked with the board of education last Wednesday. We got a little reprieve from our losing of our school, but you veterans gonna make a difference. So that way y'all can sit in, knowing what's going on, and get some input, since y'all been there. And I appreciate that Mr. Scott would do that. Get that letter to Mr. O'Neill, and making sure that their night is not the same night the council. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Seeing none.
Motion to adjourn.
So move. Second.
All in favor? Aye. Good night, everybody.
We need to change the date, not us.
No, we'll talk to them. I tried that before.
You tried that before?
But the bottom line is, we don't, from our elected
When I was on the school board, we did
but I don't mind us not meeting on the same, but elected bodies, if you guys don't, we don't talk much.
We don't even meet.
That cop will arrest you.
But we need to, and I'm going to have a perspective.
Can I put my boxing gloves on? I think there's some issues that are referring to Sharon questions about it, because schools are in our neighborhood, so they can't operate in nor can we. So I think that there's a need to have a level, and I think having meetings on the same page is really that makes sense.
Because also, if there's record citizens, we
They can't have any. They need to know, they need to know different. So what's the fun money?
This is just a thing of time.
Okay, so what's
Saturdays after the break.